We've got
Okay.
86 on, so if you could come and share, that will elevate you to the top. Otherwise, I shall be scrolling through. Please, everyone, do have a look in the chat because there's some fantastic chats in there. There's also loads of examples of other people doing it. And just as Katie comes on,
Can you hear
we're going
me?
to wave her book. Can hear you, can't see you, but I can hear you. And
Okay.
I can
I've
see your
just.
presentation.
Okay, you can. Okay. Can
Let me
everyone
check.
else?
Can everyone can everyone see Katie? Are you on video? Oh, there you are. It's because there's so many. If you can't,
Yes.
like me, you might have to scroll through. Katie, I didn't know if you were there earlier. We had to come off the webinar. So we're on
Okay.
meetings, so much more relaxed. And I'm so excited for your session. Let me just tell everyone who you are and I will hand over to you. So, Katie is a customer insight strategist. She helps organizations get closer to the people they serve. With a background in journalism and over a decade working with leadership, product, and communication teams, Katie specializes in improving how organizations gather and use insight to reduce wasted spend and increase impact. So, woohoo! Because Katie completely gets public health, and she wrote the fantastic book Do Penguins Eat Peaches? It's in your book drawer. Okay, this is my secret because of course I'm excited because it's questions. We do behavioral insight. Just to say, we also always pay. There was a comment like, oh, we're supposed to be grateful to underserved groups for giving their opinions and things. Is like, exactly. But this is my secret sauce for all of our work. So I'm just giving it all away now. You won't need us anymore. But seriously, I read this nearly every time I write a topic guide. So super excited. Thank you, Katie.
Oh, thank you so much, Ruth, and for everyone joining today. So everyone can see, just making sure everyone can see my presentation because I actually can't see it, but
Yeah,
hopefully, yes, you can.
yeah,
Okay,
you can.
brilliant. So you've already done the introductions, and I know we're quite tight on the schedule today, so I'm just gonna
We're
dive.
okay now.
Oh
We're
yeah,
okay
we're
now.
back on
Yeah, we're
track.
back on
Okay.
track.
Yeah, so as you introduced me, I'm a customer insight strategist and I help organizations, companies get closer to the people that they want to serve and effectively, design the products and the services that, deliver on the outcomes that we intend them to have. And one of my favorite topics to talk about is the power of asking better questions. I think many organizations for sure like have good intentions when it comes to designing the services for their communities, for their audience, but in practice often fall short, and that's mainly in the ways that they engage their communities, and whether they're doing like surveys or focus groups, I so often see like the wrong type of questions being asked. And this can be when you've decided to do some co-creation in terms of programs or services, or getting feedback on an existing service and areas to improve. So today I'll be sharing, my stop, steal, and start, and it would revolve around what to stop asking, what to start asking, and then some tips that you can take away and hopefully implement this week. So let's start with my stop, and it might surprise you a little bit from a researcher point of view. Stop asking people what they want, and I know that sounds counterintuitive, but the truth is people don't always know what they want. And obviously I'm sure everyone's heard of the famous Henry Ford quote when he asks them, what do you want, and they say faster horses. They wouldn't even conceive the idea of a car. So people don't always know what they want or what is possible in the future, but they do have a grasp on, their own lived experience, how they felt, and the steps or the journey they made to get to, whether it's a clinic appointment or a community engagement program, or they know that they know their lived experience, their present and their past. But the future, we kind of want to avoid asking people too much to project themselves into the future, because most patient surveys or engagement forums, consultations, they tend to lead with what do you want from this service, or what can we do to improve this service? And the answers, you will get answers potentially like, oh, we want better flexible appointments or better parking in front of the clinic, but they're rarely that insightful if you really want to improve on a service. So I thought we could take an example of like a diabetes clinic in a GP surgery. And let's say that they're kind of struggling with attendance, like people are not showing up as expected or as planned, and they're trying to, figure out why so that they can get more people to attend. So they run a patient survey, and they ask an obvious question that would come to mind: what would make you more likely to come? And the answers that they come back with are, as I said before, oh, we'd like better parking or more flexible appointment times. And so this clinic invests in both of those things, but attendance doesn't really move the dial, and attendance kind of barely moves. So that was my my stop. So stop asking people about, how would they like to see the service improve, or what would make them more likely to come. What we're going to be asking instead. So we want to be asking about the past and present experience of your community, of your audience. So let's come back to our diabetes clinic example. A community health researcher goes and tries something a little bit different. And instead of just a survey with those type of questions that I've just mentioned, she sits with the patients or people in the waiting room and asks, one simple question: walk me through the last time you came into an appointment, from when you woke up that morning to arriving here today. And what she hears is a completely different story and a completely different set of responses from the survey that they did initially. People will be saying things like, some patients talked about childcare. The appointment is at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, and they have a toddler. They've got no wraparound care. A partner can't take time off work, and that slot just doesn't work for their life. And no one ever asks them about their life. Some talked about work. They're on a 0 hours contract, for example, and missing a morning to come to a 10 a.m. appointment actually means losing, £40. And that's not a small thing. And, potentially the letter that came for the appointment didn't mention that potentially reasonable adjustments existed. Some talked about potentially the fear, not the clinic itself, but what they might find out. If I don't go, I don't have to know how bad it is, using like ignorance a bit as a coping mechanism. And no extra parking spaces is going to fix that for this particular gentleman. And so a survey that focuses too much on asking people what they want in the future kind of flattens everything down to kind of logistics, parking and opening hours, because it only captures really what people could say out loud easily, or on tick box on a form when asked just kind of direct, closed questions. And so the conversation, by changing the focus to asking patients and audiences for their stories, like talk me through how you got here today, and that just opens a whole lot of new insight for the institutions and organizations that are trying to figure out how to do better for their community. And each one of these new insights pointed to a very different intervention. Like, we could already speculate about what kind of things they could do to support some of these insights around, the childcare, or reasonable adjustments around missing work and things like that. But a blanket basic survey just wouldn't get that with the wrong questions. And the truth often only comes out when you ask people, what happened, not what people imagine they may do differently in the future. So I think that's what I want to for you guys to take away, is like really start probing about present and past behaviors, because the future, it doesn't exist. And there's many a service and product that has died a slow and painful death by companies and organizations asking, oh, if we did this, would you come? And people go, oh yeah, maybe, and then no one comes. So really, let's focus on present and the past. And so with that in mind, I thought I'd let you steal my 4 techniques around better questions that you can use this week or in your future research. You can find all of these in the book that Ruth mentioned, which is called Do Penguins Eat Peaches? And Other Unexpected Ways to Discover What Your Customers Want. And it's a really accessible and practical market research guide for anyone wanting to understand their audience better. And I think, as you mentioned, Ruth, and that's really the intention with the book, was to make it easy to digest, practical, that people can kind of go away and implement themselves. And so I took 4, I've got actually 5 or 6 golden rules in my book, but I took 4 here for you today. When you're designing surveys or if you're doing interviews and focus groups, we really want to be asking open questions. So instead of asking something like, did you find it easy to get to your appointment today? That kind of warrants a yes or no answer. We want to be asking things like, can you walk me through the last time you came to a clinic appointment? You'll get far more insight and rich insight from asking the question slightly differently. So sticking to open-ended questions. Number 2 is avoid the leading questions, and this comes up quite a lot, I see as well in surveys. So instead of, do you find it hard to get to your appointments? Again, take out the language, the implied language around, oh, this is difficult to get to the appointment, and say, tell me about the last time you had a health appointment. How did that go? So you're not leading the person you're talking to down any particular route. You keep the question and the language quite neutral. Number 3 is around ditching the hypotheticals, and that kind of comes back to our point around not projecting the patient or the audience too much into the future. So instead of, would you come if we offered an evening slot? That's all hypothetical. They could say yes. That might not be the real reason why they're not coming in, for example. So yet again, tell me about the last time you had to rearrange your day to make a health appointment work. And the answers you'll get often, they're the ones that will help you really understand some of the barriers, for example, for people attending particular clinics. And then for any of you who have toddlers or who have had toddlers, I like to call this one the toddler technique. So keep asking why, and then often why again. Like, don't just stop at the first one. Obviously do this not like a toddler would do, but for example, if we take our diabetes example again, a patient might say, I just found it really hard to get here. Instead of leaving it at that, you really want to say, okay, well, what made that hard? Tell me more about that. Why is that, do you think? And just keep probing and probing, because often the gold is after 3 or 4 asking, why, or tell me more about that. So you kind of keep going until you hit a little bit of nugget of information, which you wouldn't have if you just stopped at the first answer, for example. So yeah, these are kind of 4 of the techniques that you can use this week. And as I said, they're all in the book. And I also have like quite a handy question guide at the end with some examples. So when you are building your surveys or your focus groups, there's like a question bank that you can take from. And I think, yeah, that's my main 3 points today, Ruth. And I think the main thing is just, make sure that you're asking people about their actual experience. I think that's the biggest takeaway, their actual experience. That's what they know best. And from that, you will get enough insight to design, successful, engagement programs, communication in the future. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. The chat has been so busy. Everyone's like, woohoo! Thank you so much. What you've just said is just the key for me. Lots of clappings coming. Absolutely amazing. Very clear takeaways, because this how do you ask questions? It's so often skipped. And we have this huge desire to help. Everyone in these jobs really wants to be inclusive, wants to make a difference, wants to bridge these gaps. And yet you can get very nervous and, like you say, fall right into the wrong questions. And so your 4 techniques are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions for Katie in the chat? Everyone is agreeing. Everyone's saying it's incredible. And everyone's discussing it, which is absolutely wonderful.
I see, and I think it's really important to say that the intention, the good intention, is always there. And whenever I'm in any kind of health related environment, I can see if there's a little survey or there's the buttons with the, did we do well today? And I'm just thinking, you're just missing out on all this other type of insight. And often it's just a tweak, it's just a reframe, it's just another review of the questions, because I think it is automatic in a way, and that's why I said it was counterintuitive. My first kind of stop asking people what they want, because it's like, what, isn't that the whole point? We're trying to ask them what they want, we're trying to do what's best for them, and it just you will get to what they want, but not by but by understanding their reality, and making them feel safe enough to explain, you know, their journey to today. I think that's it blows people's mind when they start doing that. It's like, oh my goodness, we did not know this about our communities and our patients.
Okay, so just one thought before the question. I've got a question there from Liz, but yeah, and with your whys, often when we write our topic guides or you're doing your engagement forms, what we're going to ask, how we're going to ask, allowing room for the why is really important. And with the qual, don't fall into thinking you have to have every sentence perfect, because you are going to ask those whys, and just reflect back the words that people are using to you to check. So you can't almost pre-write. A topic guide is a guide, it's not a survey, if that makes sense. And sometimes with our qual, we try and control it a little bit too much. So I love the three whys. Also, anyone out there, okay, come on, who's asked, do you like our logo, and then expect some sort of behavior change to follow?
Yeah, people spend too much time
really
on this, and design is absolutely important, you know, that perception, but yeah, there's more important questions to ask. And I think I saw someone maybe ask a question about getting buy-in for more time sensitive research. I think sometimes, I think what I've tried to do in this book is give practical ways, like guerrilla techniques in a way, so you can maybe you've already got a research program in motion, and you know it's already you know, the train has left the station and you can't really stop that, so you have to kind of just feeding in, ask if you can look at the question guide. Obviously, you know, good researchers should be doing this anyway, but I think giving examples as well. The Market Research Society has got some great case studies on their website in different topics, different sectors. And I think they're always, you know, have a browse and look at if there's anything that pulls out, because that can sometimes move the dial for senior leaders in terms of getting backing for research. Look at what they did, like look at what they did differently and the outcome that they had. And sometimes it's about just grabbing conversations where you can, like if you have, if you are, it doesn't always have to be so organized and like a big process. It can be you sitting in the waiting room and just trying to, you know, engaging a couple of patients and then just doing that over you know, a number of weeks. Your colleagues do the same, write a few notes down, and like a continuous commitment to understanding, and not just that, oh, once a quarter we do a survey, that's it, tick box, we've done our community engagement, and just trying to be patient-centric or audience-centric in everything that you do, all the touch points, and it becomes then part of how you run your operations, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so thank you. And I also, just to add to that, with you, if you've got opportunity with senior leaders or senior people, do the empathy mapping, and that will go out in at the end for you, because it's when you do your empathy mapping, they join the dots themselves, realizing they don't actually know a lot of the answers. So the need to talk to your audience arises, and they kind of join the dots themselves. And then it doesn't have to be too extensive. And also, I would just say from an inclusion perspective, just linking it back to values, like even if you break down population level stats and data, where is the voice of your primary, most important, most vulnerable groups? And if you can't see it, you've got to go out and get it. And it's just joining that up for them.
Yeah, and I do, somebody's asked a question about how do you make the question succinct? And I think there's a difference between when you're doing it in a qual scenario and actually having a face-to-face or like online conversation, where I think it's more, the environment's more leans towards being able to ask longer questions. If you're doing like a written and a survey form, there are kind of different techniques. You won't by default be able to go as deep as if you were talking to someone in terms of getting insight. But there are many bad surveys out there, Ruth, and I'm sure you would agree, and there are ways that you can make them better. Like if you are trying to get more qual insight from a survey, like you only really can afford maybe 2 open-ended questions in a 10-question survey. The others have to be like multiple choice or quite quick. It's just that's just the expectation people have of the survey, unless you're maybe it's a deep survey and they're getting paid or things like that. But if you're just trying to get like patient surveys, my tips would be really like, keep it as short as possible, really put the most effort into the question design and think through what decisions and actions do you want to take after asking this survey. Try and think back, like, okay, we could if we had like a creche, for example, what questions would we need to ask to find out whether that would be a good thing for the community? Or don't just because otherwise it's just interesting. We're not looking for just interesting insights. We're looking for actionable insights that really move the dial for the people that we're trying to support and help. And sometimes people, you get a survey and you think, oh, you look at the responses, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, and they quite liked that. I mean, that's wasting people's time, in my opinion.
Thank you so much. There's a question from Joanne White. She says about the scalability or the idea. So if we've got deep qual, will you be able to extract the insight so it can be applied more broadly, regardless of demographic? If you're on 0 hours contract, the barriers will be the same. So for example, I guess this is about applying qual and the limitations and scalability of qualitative insights.
Yes, no, I think people make the mistake of thinking that you have to speak to like hundreds and hundreds of people for something to be relevant, especially in the qual space. I'm a firm believer of like identifying particular topics potentially for a particular demographic, so you're choosing the right people to speak to, but then really only speaking to between, I don't know, 7 and 12 people within that group. Obviously 7, 12 people are not going to represent everyone in that group, but if you're choosing if you've got like 3 core demographics, for example, then even 5 to 7 interviews within each of those will be enough to start seeing emerging trends or things that are overlapping. We like to think that everyone is very different and unique, and in many ways they are, but certain groups, a lot of human struggles and challenges around this are very common actually when we start diving into this. So I think sometimes senior leaders want to see, or we try and say, oh, we're going to speak to 80 people. That's not really it's really not necessary to speak to that many people. Like you can do and it's proven in research that after 5 you'll start seeing very common themes if you've got a good questionnaire. So you have to design a research. I think, yeah, definitely make sure you're recruiting the right people for what you're trying to do, but be a bit more targeted, I suppose, instead of just saying, oh, we're going to improve everything. Maybe just slice things off. How can we improve things for, single mums on low wage income, for example? Like what we're going to do to move the dial for them instead of what we're going to do to move the dial for everyone. There might be some common things for everyone, for sure, but then just kind of taking smaller groups and smaller chunks.
Yeah. And just to link this to the inclusion, Katie, I think in health sometimes the value of qual gets linked to how many interviews you've done.
Yes, I know.
And then and it's like, oh, if we do more interviews, we get more for our money. And it's actually the opposite, because the analysis, we've got the behavior change frameworks. If you use the insight with your behavior change frameworks, you can literally, it's like dough, you can stretch your insights. And then that's when you can start scaling the insights quite easily, because like you say, you've got your shared behaviors. So it comes
And
down
then
to
you can
having,
validate it on a bigger scale with a survey, for example. I think
yeah,
sometimes qual is a good place to start. You're starting to see emerging themes, then you scale it up, and then you can do a survey, which often costs less. Maybe it's digital, and it can be sent out to a wider group of people. And then
yeah,
the combination of those two will really give you a good understanding. And I think also not to forget like some of the guerrilla techniques that I think are very useful around, forums and Reddit threads, and like, we have tools now to help us digest huge chunks of information. And I think we should really go there and look at that publicly available information, whether it's on Facebook groups, and look at the emerging, people talk online, people share
yeah,
a lot online on threads, and it can be a really great place to find customer language or community language and put that into AI. Obviously you probably all have different policies around AI, but these tools are helping us digest and understand people faster, but they can't replace getting fresh insight for qual. I think that there's always
yeah,
going to be a place for that
yeah.
in research.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Right. We've gone up to the 12. Thank you so
Right.
much, Katie.
Thank you. I really
I
enjoyed
just think
that.
everyone get in touch with Katie. Katie has an amazing Substack as well. So we've got the book club, Brainfield Book Club over on Substack, and Katie has a brilliant, what's the name of it again?
It's
Oh,
called
I love a
Jungle
line.
Juice.
Jungle Juice. Oh, I
There
love
you
it.
go.
Oh,
Like quirky names. But yeah, I'll put the links in. I'll stay on it for a bit. Is there another talk after Ruth? Is there?
there
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
There
Okay.
is. Yes, we have. So I'm going to hand over to Catherine now, who's going to introduce Alison. Yes, so straight over. Let's take a couple of minutes if anyone wants. Should we start? I think, oh, you're here. Oh, you're all here. You're all organized. We'll just take 2 minutes to get organized if you people want to stretch and walk and things and welcome. I'll hand over to Catherine and Alison. Are you there, Catherine and
Yes.
Alison? Oh, you're both there. Oh, see, works now. See, I have no trust. I'm like, are you there? Is anyone there? And just actually, just before we move over, I wanted to reflect in the chat. Thank you to Eleanor and